Welcome to Growing a B2B SaaS. On this show, you'll get actionable and usable advice. You'll hear about all aspects of growing a business to a business software company. Customer success, sales, funding, bootstrapping, exits, scaling, everything you need to know about growing a startup, and you'll get it from someone who's going through the same journey. Now your host, Joran Hoffman.
Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. Within SaaS, one thing is for sure. You need to track and measure how your business is performing in many different ways. Keeping track of benchmarks will help you to understand the current market. We're going to talk to Patrick Campbell today. He has access to the data of around 36,000 SaaS companies, has almost the same amount of followers on LinkedIn, and bootstrapped this company profit well to a 200 million acquisition by Pedal last year. I personally had to laugh when I read his LinkedIn post announcing the acquisition. He started it with some news. Sold profit well, joining Pedal. Bootstrapped to over 200 million, now to IPO. I think he's a great example of bringing a lot of value to the SaaS community while still growing his own SaaS business. People love listening to him as he is willing to share anything. And that's exactly what he's going to do today. Can't be more happy to have him on the show today to share his journey about Profitwell and his knowledge about how to become a data-driven SaaS company. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you. For any reason people are still not convinced to listen to you today, in your own words, why should people listen to you?
I don't think you should listen to me. I think you should listen to some of the context I'm able to bring from the unique position that we're in at Paddle, particularly when it comes to, the data we're able to study and aggregate. That's, we should follow the data. I thankfully am just a mouthpiece for the data. So it's less about me. It's more about the insights that we're able to see.
Nice. And the data is coming from Profitwell metrics, right? 36,000 companies. Has it always been a free product to use?
Yeah, to back up, and you kind of said it in the intro, we have this free product called Metrics. I think it's going to get rebranded Paddle Metrics, but it was Profitwell Metrics, at least for now. And we ended up giving that away for free, mainly because, frankly, selling an analytics product is terrible. It's really hard. It's really hard to sell an analytics product. People don't appreciate the amount of time and effort and the value of actually getting that number to be, as 100% accurate as it can be. So we were thinking of selling it early days, and it's basically a reporting. It handles all of your reporting for free, all of your financial reporting if you're a subscription business. Yeah, and then we discovered that we did our own research, and it was really going to be a really hard time to scale it. So we had a choice. We could go up market, which is what most analytics companies do. We could give up and just do something else, which was definitely an option, or we could do this freemium play, which is ultimately what we ended up doing, and ultimately what worked out well.
Yeah, then maybe a question. Was this, I guess, the first idea and then you decided we can't charge for it, let's offer different services? Or was always the play you are going to offer different services next to it?
So first, the biggest problem and the biggest mistake people make with freemium is they think about it as a part of their pricing or revenue model rather than as part of their acquisition model. And the reason it's part of your acquisition model is because you are essentially taking your product, which is the best content you have, and you are giving part of it away for free as content. You want to think about it almost like a premium ebook, because freemium is not something that all of a sudden solves any part of your business problems if done right, except for acquisition. So the best freemium plans, they're typically 1 to 2 years into a business's life cycle. Once you understand your customer, once you understand how to convert them, and all of a sudden you want to kind of open up that top and that middle of the funnel. And so that's the thing you got to understand. And with freemium, you're able to, the benefit isn't like the first 30 days or the first 2 weeks. The benefit is you're nurturing that lead over time. So much of sales is about timing. And so with freemium, what I'm able to do is if it's not the right time to sell, I can nurture that lead, or I have the right to nurture that lead, every month, every single day, depending on what your product looks like. And then when they start to think about, oh, I need this solution, or I need to do more with this, that's when they convert to being a paying customer. And so it's putting the onus of conversion mostly on the customer with probably some nudges, and less on like some artificial sales process or artificial free trial that is just based on time, which, kind of pushes a lead to a point of conversion. And then if they're not ready, like you lose that conversation. So with us, what we discovered, and one of the biggest misconceptions is that a freemium plan, at least in my opinion, if you're doing freemium right, should be better than the paid competition. So you used to be able to have a free product that was kind of just like almost a trial-ish type product. It had like crappy features or it was really, really limited. You really need your free version to be almost full feature, but maybe limited in like how much you give. Like you don't get more than 100 email sends or something like that with the free product, or it needs to be basically something that they can use every single day or every month, and then all of a sudden they can upgrade to other stuff, right? And so those are the two types of freemium. One is called faux free trial. You limit some sort of metric or something inside the app, and then your target customer, when they burn through that, typically within a couple of weeks, they're presented with a point of conversion, and then they can upgrade to the paid plan that gives them unlimited or whatever the limit is on the particular paid plans. Or there's this I call it tangential free, which is basically a forever free product like a profitable metrics, and then we sell other stuff to you that solves tangential problems, and that's what we ultimately did. And so for those who don't know, we have this free product, then we have a product that optimizes your pricing, we have a product that optimizes your churn, we have a product that does revenue recognition. And then now with kind of the whole paddle suite, we have something that just takes on, your billing, payments, all those types of things as well, outside of this free product that you're using, your current billing system.
Nice. To give an example as well, where, for example, doing the freemium model and then the model you mentioned first, as in we limit the amount of revenue somebody can generate via our product. And then from there, if they hit that threshold, they have to start paying us. So in the end, giving all the features, but as soon as they hit a threshold, they need to start paying, but they got so much value already. One question regarding like your free product, would you be able to share any conversion rates, as in from people actually signing up to ever moving to a paid product of Profitwell, and now in this case also from Paddle?
Yeah, I get asked a lot about free to paid conversion. The problem with giving an answer to this is that it's so variant. It depends on the efficiency of your funnel. So because it comes down to like percentages, and like I've had people who are like very proud of a 10% conversion rate from free to paid. And I just go to them and I look at the rest of their funnel. I'm like, you're not pushing anything. Like you're just like, this is like, there's not enough free users coming in. There's not enough people, quote unquote, downloading the ebook. And so you're proud of something that you're not really taking advantage of, right? And then I've had people who have 0.01% free to paid conversion, and their funnel is amazing. It's just immaculate. And so I think the thing that you have to think about, and it also is dependent on like how quick of a game you're playing, right? With Profitwell, our LTV is so high, no matter the product you choose, and then obviously through cross-sell, that I kind of am okay if you don't pay for something for a year. Like I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that time horizon, right? But if I'm running a faux free trial where I'm only giving you 100 email sends or 100 accounts or whatever it ends up being, that conversion probably needs to happen in the first couple of months, right? And you'll get a trickle over the next months from there. So yeah, it's probably the wrong metric to look at. The right metric is a cohort of your customers coming in free. How much of that cohort are you converting in 3 months, 6 months, and then the first year, or 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, if you're a little bit of a quicker sales cycle? And then is that number going up over time? Because it's just like retention, like trying to keep customers around, or churn. But when I look at this, I can go, okay, what's happening here is our first 30 days is pretty good, but we're not really improving in our 3 month. Can we do more product marketing in that particular place to kind of raise those particular people up?
I always like the new fresh perspectives. You bootstrap Profitwell, right, with a full feature product as mentioned. So getting people in on the self-serve free product. What kind of challenges did you experience, especially at the beginning, converting those free users into a paid subscription?
I think the hardest part of, I would say, freemium, and frankly, bootstrapping with freemium and multi-product freemium with bootstrapping is that. Like the hardest part was, I think our ambitions were to be a very large company, and we did not achieve that. And so I think one of the reasons is that we should have raised money probably when we knew Profitwell was going to be free, and when it's a financial product that requires accuracy. Those two things mixed together means a lot of work and a lot of time. I mean, it worked out. I'm not complaining. We created a very large exit, as well as, tens of millions of dollars of revenue. But I think it's one of those things that it probably would have been better to kind of like have more fuel to the fire to develop multiple products quicker. I think that most companies, they develop multiple products. It used to be when you're 100 million in revenue. Now it's like closer to 5 to 10. We kind of started it. I mean, we had this pricing product. That was our first product ever. And then we built the free product. So we kind of had this, like, we were kind of starting it at zero, like almost like we were, getting seed investment. But it's my first company, so we were kind of reacting to not really knowing what to do. And part of that naivete was really helpful because everyone told us we were dumb. Part of that also held us back because as an operator now, I can recognize like, oh, we need more parallel paths going, or we need to like supremely focus, and money solves both of those problems depending on the context, of course.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier already, like the product is still free. You mentioned like you probably won't be able to charge for it or no, you're not expecting they're going to charge for it. Is that still the case? Like, are you never going to charge for Profitwell, and is it still going to be lead generator for your Profitwell products and now Pedal products?
Yeah, I mean, you never say never. Like and that's not code for we're talking about it or anything. I said this every single time someone asked me a Profitwell as well, but like, I think it would be very dumb for us to charge for the metrics product. I highly doubt we are ever going to charge for it. And the reason is because if you look at the market, you have Chart Mogul, you have Baremetrics, and that's not even like, and then you have spreadsheets, right? And then you have a bunch of like dozens of different analytics or BI tools. It's not a great market. Like, it's not a great market at all. And so am I going to try to skim a couple million, maybe like $5 to $10 million off the top? Or am I going to try to get $100 million of lifetime value off the top of it being free, right? Like, that's not a hard decision to me. I could see a world where we have like an actual BI product, because if, in the phases of how we were building metrics, like eventually, like we did all the hard work of like the calculations and keeping up with, because that's what a lot of people don't realize. They're like, oh, Stripe, it should just, the analytics should be accurate. Like Stripe's analytics haven't been accurate for 6 years now. And they're still not accurate because it's hard. It's really, really difficult because everyone implements everything a little bit differently. It's actually a little bit easier to get Recurly analytics or Paddle analytics to be very, very accurate because there just aren't as many like factors, like how you can implement those tools. Stripe, you can implement in many different ways. And so like, there's 1,300 different edge cases we account for in Stripe, and Stripe themselves still can't get it right. So it's like, that's a thing to kind of think about, where we've done all that hard work. So theoretically we could provide, something on top of it that's more of a BI tool, or we do have this thing called Rev Connect where we can take all of that clean data and port it into HubSpot, Salesforce, eventually into Snowflake or those types of things. So maybe we charge for something along that angle. But again, I think it's short-term revenue, which is not a bad thing, but like you got to keep in mind the mid to long game when it comes to freemium as well. And that's another reason why, we went down this path.
Yeah, and at the moment you have so many complementary products, of course, that probably doesn't make sense indeed to start charging, because you have so many things you can offer besides the free product.
Yeah, exactly.
You've done something, of course, a lot of founders would love to do as well, bootstrapping a startup to 200 million acquisition. What do you think is the biggest reason you were able to do this?
Which part? Bootstrap the company to a size worthy of that, or actually selling the business, I guess?
Let's take both, I guess.
Okay. I think one of the biggest reasons we were able to grow and scale in this particular manner, I think it was kind of what we were just talking about, which was a willingness to optimize for the long term. Part of running a business, it doesn't matter if you're funded or not, is so much just living in the contradiction constantly. The contradiction of everything's going to be okay, we're going to take over the world, and everything's terrible. And you need both of those things at the same time. You need that, it's a little insensitive to say, but you need like that level of schizophrenia a little bit, because what that does is like, that makes sure that you're like moving things forward. You're not tanking the team, but you're also realizing that there are like flanks that you need to cover, right? And so for us, we optimize long term, which doesn't mean we move slowly or we were not impatient. It meant that like we made decisions optimizing for the long term, but in the short term, we voraciously executed and went after like tempo and efficiency. So we published a significant amount of contact with a team of 4 to 5 people on marketing. We published more than like we weren't at HubSpot level, because that's basically the top of the heap when it comes to publishing if you're not like a full-blown media company. But we published so much more content, and it was over a particular bar. Like, not all of it was fantastic, but it was all good. And I think that came from an obsession with understanding the system that we were building and then holding ourselves to a tempo. And so to make this really practical, let's say I was walking into your marketing team, your sales team, just your business in general. The first thing I would do is I would literally map out. This is one of the first things I did at Paddle here, and we're finally going to publish it, at least internally, which is like, let me just follow a dollar through the system. Like for you, it might be, let me follow a contact, or it might be following something through the system. How does this work, right? Well, we do this, then this is this, and the user adds this. And then I start color coding things based on like, what is something we have to do? What is something they have to do? What is something we pay for? What is something they pay us for? What is something that we use a subcontractor for, or something like that? Let's put the costs, or let's put the time each thing stays in a particular place. And then when I can look at that system, I can go, okay, where should we start? Where should we fix? Where should we optimize for, right? And you can do this on your company level. Like, cool, like let me look at, or your org level. Let me look at, for marketing, we chose a media model, which was shipping a lot of content. Great. How much content can we produce? How much of this type of content? Let's map out all of the steps it takes to produce that content. Oh, it's interesting. We spend this many hours doing, for example, when we do like a show, 10 episodes of Pricing Page Teardown, which is a video series we do about pricing pages. When we started mapping this, we were like, oh, when we add up all the time, we spend 10 hours setting up and 10 hours pushing down if we basically published every single week and filmed every week. If we just film at once, we can cut 20 hours, 18 hours, because there's only 1 hour setup then and 1 hour teardown, rather than doing that every single week. So it's just like realizing stuff like that and obsessing over the system. And then the other piece of that is obsessing over tempo. What does good look like in terms of shipping, launching products and stuff? Well, ideally, we would launch something every single month that our customers were excited by. Okay, where are we at right now? Once every 6 months. Okay, well, is that because we don't have stuff to ship or announce? Or is that because, what is the reason? Well, something of that level. Well, what if we had smaller stuff? And then we say, all right, product, your job is to give us something per month. We can figure out a story. You would make a lot of improvements that no one sees. Great. We'll package that into, I don't know, something around, we did a bunch of efficiency, right? Our security stuff. All right, we're going to announce SOC 2. Like, we're going to get marketing out of announcing these things, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, great, we got to 1 a quarter. Then we got to like 1 to 2 a quarter. Then we get to 1 a month, right? And then you kind of work backwards. And I think what a lot of companies do, they react. And then sometimes they end up getting to a point where they end up like, okay, finally we got to 1 a month, right? But what they should be doing is calling out the once a month, having their team be like, that is the goal. We realize we're not there yet, and working towards it, because you end up getting to that 1 a month quicker. It's a lot more intentional with what you're trying to do. So those are the things that I think made us really successful. Besides, like, I think we were very intentional about culture. We weren't the whole time, but when we started getting intentional about culture, everything got better. We definitely, have a fantastic product team. We definitely did some unique aspects of our marketing, which all came from first principles thinking. There's a lot of those types of things, but that concept of operations that I just described were really good. And I think in terms of being able to sell, I think that brand aspect helped a lot. Having a great product with very high NPS, even though it's free, it's really hard to have a great product that's free and have high NPS. Having our LTV be high. We didn't go after $50 a month. Anytime there was something that was $50 a month, we were just like, just give it away. Just give it away. It didn't make sense because our TAM, our logo TAM, wasn't big enough. There's only about 150,000 subscription companies. SaaS companies, there's probably less than 50,000. So it's like, $50 a month doesn't make a big business. So we were like, no. We have to get after 3-figure MRR, at least $100, let alone like we're optimizing for 4-figure MRR, $1,000 or more, to really make this a great business. So those are the types of things I think really helped, because when you're selling a business, someone, whether it's a PE firm, a company, et cetera, they're going to put stuff into a model, and that model is going to spit out whether this is a good deal or not and what the deal should be. And when you have brand and high LTV, like those are two things that mix together really well. And probably an element that helped, another thing that probably helps, is we weren't looking to sell. That makes it so much easier to sell, because honestly, you're like, anytime there's a thing or anytime a number isn't what you want, you're just kind of like, well, we can just keep building our business, And so that's kind of the thing that we kind of think about. But yeah, those are hopefully some helpful things to folks listening.
Nice. And I do see some correlation between what you mentioned, as in getting the marketing out once a month, right? Or having a product update once a month, where the culture also takes into place. Because if you are going to basically market the things you've been doing, you're also going to say how great the team is and how much they have been working to get things done. Like the product team will be happy. Marketing is of course happy because they can share things. Sales have new things to share. So I think there is a correlation, I guess, there as well, where the more you talk about yourself or like what has happened internally, the more the people are also going to be happy. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's momentum. That's the thing. because momentum is a thing that's really hard. And this is why like building a company over 20 years is really, really difficult. Building it over like 7 to 10 gets a lot easier. And then if you have enough momentum, you can extend that to 15 for kind of your core team. And the reason is because like, yeah, people want momentum, but also your customers want momentum. This is why we would announce stuff, because people didn't always know what we announced, but they knew we were announcing stuff. And there was always a video, there was always like some social with it, there was always an in-app takeover. And we worked in order to get things that weren't trite. Like we wouldn't do security and then page optimization at one after another. Like there had to be like an actual product, feature that they could see or touch or something like that. But yeah, it helps the team as well because they see the positive interactions. Sometimes it distracts them a little bit, but yeah, that's super important. You're right.
Let's dive into the data. I mean, I saw you, of course, during the SaaS Talk local tour in Amsterdam. You mentioned growth is harder during this time due to more competitors, higher customer acquisition cost, salaries increasing, and people staying shorter at companies. What should SaaS companies do now to keep growing?
That's a really broad question. I think overall, it really comes down to this. You have three main growth levers in your business, right? Acquire customers, monetize them, retain them. Those are the three levers. You put a ton of time, effort, budget, money into acquisition, which you should. You need to. You probably need to spend more there, unfortunately, even though that's where most of your money goes for growth. I think you need to get unique with your acquisition, or at least more leverage with your acquisition. I think too many companies that I see in terms of their growth and marketing and even their sales, they do a lot of like throw stuff up against the wall or like a little bit bets here and there. I think leadership is about choices. You got to choose inside sales, which is a very common thing in SaaS, which is great. And then content that's supported by paid or X. I don't know what X could be for your business. It's going to change a little bit depending on who's listening. But I think those are the things to kind of really, really focus on. I think the other thing to kind of think about is not being okay with mediocre. A lot of people will test something and they'll do a very mediocre execution. And the problem comes in if they think it wasn't mediocre. That's a whole different conversation though. But like inside sales, if you do what everyone else does, you should expect probably not even the same results, probably worse results, right? Because that person who gave you that benchmark is doing things a little bit differently and it worked for them, but it might not work for you. You got to figure out how to break not enough people like spend time like agonizing over email copy. Like one thing that we did is we treated our core cadences for outbound sales kind of like code, like almost like version control. Everyone uses the same cadences for the different folks. And then we had a growth manager kind of optimize them. And then any outbound sales rep could do we called it beat the Vic because Vic was the guy who managed this. The outbound salesperson could say, I think I can do better with this email with this subject line. We'd branch it off. They'd do it for testing period. And then if they beat it, they got a spiff and then we merged that back in so everyone could take advantage of it, right? That's a level of control that some people are uncomfortable with because they think, oh, micromanagement. It's not micromanagement. It's you have a 21-year-old kid who's great and hungry and smart. You should be like managing them on that level, and you're not micromanaging it. You're just setting up the system. You're setting up the system for them to play in. These are your guardrails. Do your thing. And then there's a bunch of other things you can do with going after things. And obviously after they ramp more, you kind of give them a little bit of a longer leash on some of these things. But I think a lot of times we're scared to go there and we're scared to do the right thing. Or we get really excited by like, oh, let's get this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool. And it's like tools help once the system is in place. That's the biggest problem. People are like, let's solve this tool. Well, of course, their landing page says they're going to solve that problem. But if you haven't manually tested it, and you can do a trial with them that tests it manually, that's fine. But like too many people like over optimize. And I'm an over optimizer. Like I am definitely one of those people, but I catch myself enough where I'm like, I was over optimizing. And then like I step back. So in terms of acquisition, those are the things I think you need to focus more on. I think in terms of monetization, retention, it's just retention. You need someone who is not in product thinking about retention. It can be in finance, it can be in operations, it can be in growth. The reason is because product teams think about what's called strategic retention, which is all the like paper cuts, the onboarding, the features, struggling to like figure out value, which is this big nebulous concept. But in B2B SaaS, 20 to 30% of your churn problem is because of tactical things, credit card failures, cancellation flows, term optimization, these things that you can implement within a quarter or use something like Paddle and just does it for you, right? But you have to set it and forget it rather than like continuing as a product team. And a product team always deprioritizes those things because they're never as big as figuring out the next feature, those types of things. And then in monetization, just take it seriously for once. Put a calendar invite every single quarter. Hey, we got to do something with our monetization. If you're big enough, $5-10 million in ARR, like have a pricing committee. It might be 3 of you, but just run with it. Yeah, those are the things to kind of think about. And I think there's a lot of little tactical things we can get into. The beauty of SaaS is it's not hard to understand. Acquire a customer, monetize them, retain them, like I said. The pain of SaaS is that being successful requires a fastidiousness that most of us are not like willing to do because there's so many things going on in our businesses. And that's mining that precipice that I was talking to you about before.
Yeah, this is really good, and I think I am gonna zoom out again because like we can go really in detail, I guess. Like when you look at the fast growing SaaS companies and you look at the data, like what differentiates them from the rest? Like what do they do differently that they're growing still this fast?
I think the companies that are doing really, really well in SaaS, when you look at the data, they have metric-based pricing in some particular way. That's a very tactical thing. And they really figured out what that metric is per user, per 1,000 visits, per 100 widgets or WhatsApps or emails or whatever it is. It just bakes growth into your pricing. You get expansion revenue baked in. Those companies typically have NRR of 130 plus, which is, obviously what we're going for. I think those companies that tend to do really well, you think about HubSpot. I think HubSpot has defined culture very, very aggressively. And it's not only, they've defined 2 sets of cultures at that size, which I think a lot of people like don't realize. There is a culture set on leadership, like execs and kind of their wider leadership team. And then there's culture set company-wide. And the reason that distinction is important is because when you're 10,000 people, your culture, it's going to be a little diluted because you have so many people. And yes, you're trying to optimize for certain things, but you're doing it in a very dilutive form. So the cycles take a little bit longer. When you kind of define the culture at a kind of leadership level, that team should be moving as quickly as humanly possible. And when you don't define those things separately, and they look like each other, there's just like different depths of the different things, because they're obviously one doesn't go one way and the other goes another way. That wouldn't work either. That's a really important distinction. And then I think the third thing is team and hiring. You see it all the time. Like people, I did this for so long, and I'm sure I'm still going to make some of these mistakes around like, you don't pay what you should for a role. You get someone who seems good and, you're paying less. And then you kind of realize, oh, I got what I paid for. Sometimes those trade-offs are fine if you're going after a BDR role where you're training someone and you have a good program. Other times it's terrible when you're trying to hire a VP of sales in the States for like 120 to 130 OTE, which is like not going to work. But we were like, oh, we'll try it, and that type of thing. And you just make those mistakes. So it's underpaying, but it's also like not firing quick enough. I think we accept too long because we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes you just got to trust your gut. It doesn't mean you have to be mercurial about it. It can just be, most of the time everyone's on the same page. Like, hey, this isn't working out. Like, let's figure out how to move forward. But I think a lot of us wait way too long.
Yeah, and I think that goes really well to the next topic, like waiting too long. I think a lot of companies also wait too long with raising their prices. When you do raise your prices, should you grandfather your current clients? So basically not raising the pricing for them. Should you upgrade them? Like, what is your opinion on raising prices?
I am not a fan of doing legacy pricing, meaning keeping your customers on their same price. I think it's a good idea when you have like your earliest of earliest customers, if you want to throw them a bone, or you're doing like indie SaaS and you're trying to do some like early access lifetime type deals to get funding. But the problem is like people things cost money. That people know things cost money, right? Like, but we have this weird conception when it comes to pricing that we're like, we've tricked our customers into purchasing our products. And if we remind them of their price or we try to get a higher price, all of a sudden people are going to think, oh my gosh, no, I can't do this, right? It's this weird notion because the beauty of SaaS is that the product should be improving over time, like continuously, improving. When someone goes to a store and buys a better version of chocolate or bread or something like that, they pay more for it, right? Thankfully, you don't have a depreciating asset because SaaS is kind of infinite. I guess you could argue it's depreciates in the market depending on the density of your market. But long story short, like people know things cost money. And if you're improving things enough, that's fantastic. Let's go. I think the problem is that we just have convinced ourselves that we just can't have that uncomfortable conversation. And then from a money perspective, there's this period where it's really hard to get users. Then it's a lot easier to get users. And that phase takes, the first phase is like 0 to a couple million, depends on your place. And then it starts to get a lot easier. Well, you're going to reach a point, it's different for everybody, where you're going to go, oh, we already have so much market share. Well, how are you going to get more revenue if you have so much market share? Like, it's going to be harder and harder to get that next percentage of market share. Well, you're going to have to raise prices eventually, right? And so, or come out with more products, but even then you're going to probably have to raise prices. It's a really easy lever. And if you do it right, and right involves doing some research, most people just don't have the confidence. And so if you go collect some data and they say you're at $100 and current customers say $100 and people have never heard of you also say $100, okay, we're just going to stay at $100, but at least we're confident in it. At least we're not rationalizing like, oh, we're not going to raise the prices because we want to be nice. And it's like, no, you're not raising it because you don't have the confidence. And let's go get the confidence first. And then we're confident we should keep the price the same. But let's say it comes back and, current customers are saying 120 and customers who've never heard of you are saying, 200. Okay, well, let's look at the data. Let's look at the segments. And let's say we settle on $150. Well, if that's the case, then great. Our current customers, a 50% increase is a bit much. So maybe we break that out over 2 years. We're going to raise prices on our existing customers or new customers day one. And then we're going to send really good communication to those customers who are existing and say, hey, we added all of this stuff. Here's how much value you got in the past year. You did this many contacts. You wrote this many blog posts, whatever your product is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give you this, because you've been so loyal to us, we're going to give you this, we're going to raise prices on everyone today. But for you, because you've been with us for 3 years, we're going to give you next 3 months at your current rate, this much value, because you're not going up in price. And then we're just going to bump you up to the new price. And if you have any questions, let us know. Thing to keep in mind with price changes, even if you lower your price, you're going to see churn because you're reminding people that they're buying your product. And if you sent all of your receipts on the same day, that would be your highest day of churn as well. Like, it's the same thing. But what we'll notice with price increases is the churn will go up a bit. It'll actually go down then past the point that it previously was. And you'll get excited, but then it's going to creep right back up to where it was because you're just pulling forward some of that churn. Some of that churn was going to happen next month or the month after anyways, assuming you've done your homework. Now, dramatic changes in price because you're going to go into a completely different market. There's different ways to handle it. And sometimes the churn is a little bit more aggressive, but yeah, it's just one of those things to kind of keep in mind.
This is one way, of course, to grow, right? To get more revenue. Another way is to decrease your churn. Any best practices, and especially, I guess, like when looking at the data to decrease churn?
In terms of decreasing churn, I think you need a great product team who is going to agonize over all of the disparate conflicting data and onboarding and usage and NPS and all of those different things. You just need a great product team. And frankly, a product team that's like really good at saying no. A lot of product leaders, if you're a product leader as a project manager, you have to decide, did you put them in that position? And sometimes the answer is yes, because the CEO is trying to run product. Like, don't do that. You're thinking about too many different things. You should be involved in those conversations, but your product leader should be making the final product decisions. Now, there's a chance they're just not a good product person. They're a good project manager. And if that's the case, then you need to make some changes and get them some product leadership to report to, or replace them if they are in that product leadership role. But then the other part, which I mentioned, was kind of this tactical churn. 20 to 40% of churn is typically from credit card failures. So if you're a credit card based business, that's how you collect payments. Like, that's something to look into right away. Term optimization, getting monthly customers on annuals, depending on your vertical and your price point. Typically annual customers have 200 to 800% higher lifetime value than monthly customers because you're having them make one purchasing decision a year versus, 12 implicit purchasing decisions per year. And then cancellation flows. I think there's this misconception that you either have to hold someone hostage when it comes to canceling a product, or you have to just like instantly let them go and like apologize that they even wanted to cancel, right? And really, you have about 18 to 30 seconds. Customer success type businesses, you have more time, but like when someone clicks a button, you have 18 to 30 seconds of their time. Ask them why they're leaving. Really powerful, obviously, question. Multiple choice. Don't give them free response. You'll get 1 out of 100 really good responses in free response. I just want the data across a portion of even qualitative users. And then the question that people don't ask that we found works really, really well is, what did you like about the product? And the reason is because they're on a very negative path. All of a sudden you force them to be positive, and that gives you a little bit of an opening essentially to figure out, okay, I like this about the product. And then with those two questions, and hopefully some data from their actual metadata from them using the product, what plan they were on, what they did. All of a sudden now I'm going to offer an offer. Hey, you liked this, but you didn't like this. Why don't I give you, the next month free, right? Or why don't I give you, you're going to come back, but you're not going to use the product now. Let me give you a maintenance plan, or else we're going to delete all of your data, or hey, we'll be here when you're back if we didn't have the features for you or something like that. So that's a big thing. You do those three things, you can reduce your cancellations by about 20%. It's significant, or more depending on the type of your business. If you're a lower price product, typically more than 20%. But yeah, it's really, really powerful. It just requires a little bit of training and a little bit of a different mindset.
Yeah. And the cancellation flow you're talking about right now is all in product, right? So it has to fit within those 30 seconds. Otherwise, people probably get upset or angry.
Yeah, you try to make it, if it's just those two questions and then an offer, like normally you're within those 18 to 30 seconds, some of the data won't be great, right? But if you expect perfect anything in order to do it, then you're not going to be a great leader, in my opinion. Your job is to, all right, we got some great data, we got some not so great data. Well, let's look at the great data and let's not look at the bad data, right? You can actually measure, if they took 2 seconds to answer the questions, probably not great data, right? This is something we did with our pricing product for a while. So yeah, long story short, I think it's, just understanding those users and kind of, going from there.
Yeah. That's where it all starts. You need to understand your users and what they're trying to get out of the product. And then from there, you can still try to save them, of course, with all the data you have. We are almost coming to the end, and I like to ask these two questions at the end. When we look at the different stages the listeners are in, what kind of advice would you give somebody who's just starting out and trying to grow to 10K MRR?
I think that one's just cuddle with the chaos, honestly. That's just your first 10K. You're kind of it's a little bit of a knife fight. You're just all right, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. I think if you have the runway, try to focus on some measure of engagement or activation with your user before you focus on the money. Make 10 people ecstatic and using your product either every day if it's kind of a workflow product, or not at all, but still seeing the value if you're kind of a more of a set it and forget it type product. That's more important, I would argue, than the 10K, but sometimes you need the 10K to survive depending on, where your business is and if you're doing this as a side project or a full-time thing. I think then it gets infinitely easier because then you have those 10 people and maybe you expand it to 50 depending on what the product is. And then, hey, we're going to charge for this now, or we're going to charge for this version of it. And you start from a really strong foundation. I think sometimes tactically, a lot of people will do some lifetime deals and people are only buying because of the lifetime deals, or they're let's go through this distribution channel and they get customers, but then they all churn. And it's you've just injected a bunch of noise into your judgment in order to make decisions. And it felt good. And sometimes you have to make some of those short-term decisions to get, funding and stuff like that. But I don't know, if you have the ability to be somewhat patient, patient over the midterm, but not patient at all over the short term, I think that's the right mindset to have.
I can 100% relate to this because we actually did an LTD lifetime deal, I think a year ago now. And it was nice to get some money in, but in the end, it weren't the users we're really looking for always. So in the end, I'm happy that's over now and focusing fully on getting value to normal paying clients, if we can call them like that.
Yeah, totally.
Any final thoughts you want to share with other B2B SaaS founders?
No, just cuddle with the chaos, guys. It's chaotic by design. And if you're sitting there thinking oh, this person over here doesn't have to deal with this chaos, this person over there doesn't have to deal with this chaos. No, they do. It might look different. They might have the thing you're struggling with, really good. And then the thing that they're struggling at, you're good at. So that's why you get peer groups and stuff like that. But yeah, it's chaotic. And just embrace it. You want to reduce certain types of chaos over time, but then there's just another layer of chaos at some point. So not really tactical advice. That's the biggest advice I can give.
Nice. Thank you. If people want to get in contact with you, what will be the best way?
I'm Paticus on Twitter, Patticus. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I have not figured out how to manage LinkedIn messages yet. Or you can email me at pc@paticus.com. That's my direct email, my personal email. So yeah, just let me know.
Nice. Thanks again for joining, making the time and sharing your knowledge today, Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Growing a B2B SaaS. Joran has been a head of customer success before founding his own startup. He's experiencing the same journey you are. We hope you've gotten some actionable advice from the show. And we hope you had fun along the way. We know we did. Make sure to like, rate, and review the podcast in the meantime. To find out more and to hook up with us on our social media sites, go to www.getredditous.com. See you next time on Growing a B2B SaaS.